Right. Next up, I'm delighted to say we have Katya Akulinicheva, the CFO for ZeroAvia. ZeroAvia are one of the really, really exciting sustainable startups in the aviation sector. And they've created a zero-emission hydrogen powertrain that delivers 300 to 500 miles of zero-emissions flight. The company is aiming for its first commercial offering in 2024. As ever, don't forget to keep sending in your questions for Katya in the Q&A tab on Zoom now. Katya, really, really pleased to have you on this EY EV Summit online series event, and handing over to you now for your presentation. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much, and we're happy to be here. So going after all these amazing speakers, I don't have too much to add on sort of framing the overall problem. I think that has been covered very well, and the landscape that we fit within as well. I think hopefully you have a better sense of now. We fully agree that there's no silver bullet solution, and we very much agree that airlines need to adopt a portfolio approach, airlines and other operators, depending on what type of aircraft they operate, the timelines that they have in mind. And I guess ultimately also the level of risk that they're able to take. So as ZeroAvia, we fit within the new technology bucket. So we are working on hydrogen electric propulsion. So we're still a young company. We were set up about 4 years ago, initially in California, but have since also expanded very significantly here in the UK, where I'm based. And we started off as a mission-driven company. So we were not in our early days focused on hydrogen, but rather we asked the question of how can we, starting from a blank sheet as we were, how can we offer a solution that can scale to the rest of the sector and be practical and near term and eliminate emissions altogether rather than offering something that's kind of hybrid and an incremental reduction. And so having reviewed all the different solutions that were out there at the time, this is about 4 years ago, we concluded that hydrogen, despite the challenges that were pointed out earlier in the other talks, has the highest potential to scale to not only the short haul, but also longer haul applications. So we decided to go with a hydrogen electric approach for the reason that it combines the fundamental properties of hydrogen and the possibility of having an entirely green molecule if produced from electrolysis, but then also with an ultimately more efficient system that's not based on combustion, but is electric. So that was kind of one choice we made early on. Secondly, we decided to focus on existing segments of aviation. So we're not currently going after the eVTOL market, but rather we're going after an existing footprint and trying to help airlines eliminate emissions from routes they already operate and passengers and cargo that they already transport. And then finally, we decided to be a propulsion company, so working with airframe manufacturers and offering them a repowering solution to their airframes rather than redesigning the whole airframe from scratch. Long term, we do believe that airframes should change and can change to accommodate this kind of propulsion approach. But we wanted to start by focusing on the real bottleneck to reduce our time to market and also, again, allow airlines to repower aircraft that they already have in their fleets rather than only limiting them to buying new airframes. So that was kind of the framing for our approach. And in the last 4 years, we've done quite a lot, we think. So we've so far developed 2 prototypes for 6-seat aircraft. And we, about a year ago, flew the world's largest hydrogen electric aircraft here in the UK at Cranfield. And then this year, we started working on a powertrain for a 20-seat aircraft, which we expect to fly for the first time by the end of this year, and then conduct additional flight testing over the course of next year and start the certification process with a view to introduce that product to the market in 2024. And then subsequently to that, we'll be introducing a powertrain for the regional turboprop segment, so kind of 50 to 80 seats, with a view to introduce that by 2026 to the market. And just maybe closing on sort of some of the challenges that were highlighted earlier, and also some of the things that that we devote most of our effort on. So completely echo the certification challenge that's been discussed already. So that's also applies to us because there's no rule book, there are no data points. And while we've been consulting both CAA and FAA throughout our journey so far, it does remain a risk, and it is something that is beyond our control and that we do expect to be a hurdle, but hopefully there will be coordinated action to help us accelerate that process. Infrastructure, so completely agreed again with everyone that today, if you turn up at an airport, you can't get green hydrogen and you can't get it at a viable price. However, we think that actually electrolysis can be a very attractive business on its own. And by our calculation, anything above 6 flights a day starts to look attractive. from the owner of the electrolysis equipment standpoint. So we actually think that aviation is a really good use case for that, and because it provides concentrated demand and it can be used as a very helpful anchor for the hydrogen economy, and actually kind of accelerate the rollout of that rather than the other way around. And then finally, I'd say the other sort of missing accelerant is this availability of risk-taking partners. So for what we can't do what we do alone. So we focus a lot of our efforts on striking partnerships with value chain participants, so our suppliers, airframe manufacturers, but also importantly with our customers, to be able to test our solution in real operating environments, and sort of get that sort of quick iterative feedback. So that's something that is particularly difficult in this sector, but over the course of the last couple of years, we have seen greater appetite for different types of players to join on that journey. So those are just a few themes I wanted to highlight, but yeah, I'll probably stop now and see if anyone has any other questions.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. You spoke about an appetite for partnership. You're the Chief Finance Officer, so a question from me about investment and the appetite for that investment. It's obviously a super pressing problem. Do you see that problem being solved through the flow of investment capital into the sector?
Yeah, so I'll say that, so I've been in my role for 2.5 years, and the landscape has really changed. When I first joined the company, there was much less appetite to invest in the sector, in particular to invest in new propulsion that has, some of the risk elements that we've already discussed. But over the course of the last year, and in particular through some of the, implications of COVID, we've seen a much greater appetite. So today things are looking good from the private capital standpoint. But that being said, there's always cycles in the market, so we can never predict what will happen next year. So I think at least some of those, I think, are fad investments into ESG, eVTOL, this, that I'm not certain will stay at the levels they are in today. But I think beyond the private capital, there's also greater and greater availability of public or kind of sort of subsidized capital in the form of loans and things like that, that is starting to go into what the kind of things that we're working on. That has helped us already as a company. So we've gotten about $14 million committed from the UK government for various parts of our R&D. We've seen other programs pop up around the world, and there are more and more sort of hybrid subsidized instruments available to support companies as we actually scale up, to the point where we start to produce our technology.
Very good. You answered my next question, which was going to be about public sector investment. So thanks for that. You mentioned partnership and a question on that. So how can the aviation sector collaborate with automotive sector partners to accelerate the shift to zero emissions flights?
Yeah, I think there's great potential to collaborate there, because first of all, some of the technologies, while we're solving for slightly different constraints, a lot of the fundamental technological components are similar. So I think there's learnings from the history of innovation in the sector overall with kind of battery technology, fuel cell technology, but also generally kind of innovating in the overall system design space. So that's kind of one. And I think the second area where we're looking to that segment is manufacturing capability, production setup, some of those kind of more logistical areas where I think there's a lot to be learned from some of the new automotive entrants and how they've built their businesses basically from scratch in a decade to rival some of the kind of largest automotive companies that are, that were already in existence. So those are probably the two areas where we're keen to get strategic input.
Are there any specific automotive partners that you're talking to that you can tell us about?
Not yet that are public, but we're sort of exploring a number of partnerships at the moment. I think our primary focus in the first 4 years was on our direct supply chain partners that are supplying into our powertrain system, as well as airframe manufacturers and airlines with whom we will be directly interacting. But there's definitely the kind of broader landscape that we're also looking to build up around us.
Are there any specific automotive partners that you would like to speak to that you could put a call out to here now?
Well, I think probably of particular interest are some that have more experience with fuel cell technology. So some of the kind of Asian sort of Toyota, Hyundai, those kinds of players that have just had more experience experimenting with automotive applications of that.
Very good. Thank you very much indeed.